All right, ladies and gentlemen, back here on Inside Analysis. And folks, I'm so thrilled to have a longtime colleague in the business and friend. We've got Ashish Gupta with us here today, most recently from One Touch, now part of Everpure, the Everpure data intelligence product. Ashish, this is a big deal, what you guys are working on. I did not expect all this when I agreed to come to this conference. I'm so glad you guys invited me. And of course, I've known you through years.
Exactly.
Way back to Actian, which is like 13 years ago.
Very long time.
And you're having fun, right?
Yeah, I was very young at that time.
That's right. I was just out of high school, I think. No, maybe not. But I mean, so when I looked at what you folks are doing, I thought to myself, wow, this is a big deal. Because I'm in the data management space. In fact, our flagship show, DM Radio, the DM stands for data management. That's what it stands for. I joke way back when, you've heard AM, you've heard FM. Now tune into DM Radio.
I love it.
The longest running show in the world about data. And now
awesome.
Everpure is focused on tackling the really complex and very serious challenge of managing data. And the whole movement here with data privacy says, hey, instead of having an app-centric view of the world, like Salesforce or SAP or all these guys, they have a very app-centric view of the world, which is great for the app, but it's not great for heterogeneity, and it's not great for reusability and operational purposes where you want to pull data from multiple systems. So we invented data warehousing as a way to marshal the data into some area that we can run numbers and calculate and understand what's happening. But that's an offline process. It takes time, it's very expensive.
And you lose context.
You lose context. Well, that's a funny point. So I'll say one more thing and I'll turn it over to you. But I always joke that, back then, 25, 35 years ago, we had to strip out the context to get the data through thin wires to slow processors from expensive storage. Well, now storage is no longer expensive, the wires are fat, you can parallelize jobs, the processors are incredibly powerful. So all those dynamics have changed, and then AI comes along as a forcing function.
Yeah.
So here you folks are, One Touch is a key part of this new enterprise, because you're in there scanning and understanding the data. So talk about your decision to join Everpure and how this is a match made in heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really comes down to the why, right? So when you make a decision on an acquisition, and luckily I've had to make that decision several times, so it's been really fun. And what I've learned is that it first comes to the people and the vision, right? And you heard about Charlie's idea of data privacy. That's a shared vision that we have.
Right.
So when we do discovery, we go right to the data and we talk about that. The second thing is you need to be with a group of people who are intellectually honest about where the market is going, where the today product is, and where you need to do what you need to do to get to tomorrow's market. Right? And we felt that was in spades. I know the first meeting that we had, we walked over to the parking lot, and my co-founder said, this is the company we want to be with.
Wow.
Because of the people and the vision and the fact that we shared this data privacy idea.
Right.
The second thing is you want to be able to go into a market that is growing and go with a partner that's going to enable you to do that.
Right.
And they have to appreciate the technology that you have.
Right.
So while you might have the good vision, you might be good in your market, the two together need to be really solid. So that, if you will, synergy is very important.
Right. Alignment.
Right. First from the business thinking point of view, strategy point of view, now with the technology. And then third, you need to be able to see that the customer base that you're going to share is going to be able to utilize this. And this is why when you think about what Everpure is doing, it is addressing three of the main problems we have today with our data, and then starting to address the fourth one, which is emerging very, very quickly. And let me talk about those.
All right.
The first one is data is fragmented across silos of applications, as you very appropriately put together in your initial comments, and infrastructure. Right. So not only is it that it's sitting on a certain cloud when the other cloud can't access it, right? Now how do you get total visibility about your data? So that's one big challenge. The second one is unstructured data is growing uncontrollably, almost at 90% faster than structured data. Why is it doing that? Because unstructured data can be created very, very quickly and very easily, right? I'm in Salesforce. I download the spreadsheet because I like doing pivot tables. Right. I'll do a pivot table on it. I'll send it to 10 people. That's very sensitive customer information in a spreadsheet that's going around.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might even be sent to someone else, like a partner.
Right.
Now you've lost some very, very sensitive information.
Right.
The third one is governance laws are changing, compliance laws are changing on a daily basis. New ones are being introduced. So if you have these three things, the job is pretty hard to begin with. And then you add AI is a boardroom conversation, and in the boardroom conversation, AI is being pushed down very, very quickly. And to that end, to be secure, you need to have the first three that we just talked about from a data point of view. But what's also needed and is most scarier is that you need to have context. Because AI without context is kind of a strategy of hope that will get to the right reasoning. And we don't want to have that.
Right. No, that's a really good point. And context really boils down to relationships and facts.
Indeed.
If you get right down to brass tacks. And what's cool about your approach is that you are using a knowledge graph.
Exactly.
And when you come in and instantiate and scan across an entire environment, you find all the data sources. You look at all the table headings, basically.
Yep.
But you also look at the relationships between them and the access patterns. Who's accessing this data? What are they doing with it? That helps you get a more complete picture of what this really is.
Yeah.
And that allows you to wrap the appropriate governance policies around the data, right?
One thing's not changed in 13 years, Eric. You can definitely succinctly say my value proposition better than me most of the time.
That's funny.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. First thing is you need to discover data regardless of where it sits.
Right.
On-premise, in the cloud, mainframe, 68%
Right.
of all financial services transactional data is still on mainframe.
That's right.
Which
Yeah.
is huge. We're the only ones that can read that and
Wow.
do classification of it
Wow.
better than anybody else. We
That's
use
impressive.
ML techniques, we use predeterministic techniques, and then the magic happens.
Right.
We take that and we say, how is this data being used? Because we are at the data level.
Right.
How is this data being used in business processes?
Right.
I'll give you a very simple example. One of our customers is a massive credit card company. And in essence, you have an employee who's also a customer.
Right.
So they have a
Right.
credit card
Sure.
from that company.
Right.
Because they probably are very loyal to the company. Right? So there's business processes for the employee who gets paid,
Right.
and business processes for the invoice that needs to be paid
Right.
by the same social security number or national ID.
Right. Sure.
So having that context is important, because if an AI tool is going in and doing some fraud analysis
Right.
for the credit card company,
Right.
it needs to know that context.
Yes. Yeah. That's a big deal. And as I was talking to Charles Giancarlo, the CEO, and very, very wise guy, very
amazing.
calm, very nuanced. I asked him kind of a hard question in that session yesterday. I said, have you notified all the modern data stack vendors that their services will no longer be required? In the vision of the future, of course. I was being somewhat tongue-in-cheek. He did not miss a beat. He didn't flinch. He just gave a very calm and focused answer and basically said, look, this is where we see things going. And it makes tremendous sense. Because if you think about, again, what we did years ago, we extracted data from operational systems so we can analyze it. This is a very complex offline process that has many different component parts, the ETL or the ELT or the data virtualization, all this data moving around. You don't have control over it, essentially. And I would always ask those ETL vendors, do you guys have a strategic view of what's going where? And because I'll bet you your redundant efforts are all over the place. And they would just say, no. No,
ETL creates a ton of duplicity
yes.
of the data.
Sure, copies of data.
It makes a ton of data copies. I'll just tell you this cool statistic. One of our customers reduced their cybersecurity costs by over $2 million.
Wow.
Because over time, their PII data and cybersecurity costs,
Right.
in terms of principal payments that you make
Right.
For insurance, are based on how much PII data you have.
Wow.
Well, they were doing ETLs, they were doing backups, they were copying the data, it was going
Right.
to non-production environments. And we went in there and we did a complete discovery and classification of the data, and we said, look, you've got so much duplicative information.
Right.
They went the first thing to the insurance company and said, look, our number of PII is reduced by 70%.
Wow. That's amazing.
They save more money
Right.
in
Right out of the
1
gate.
year
Wow.
than most people do
Right.
with many implementations that they have to go through.
Well, and you're really simplifying the management of the data because this data needs to be used by all sorts of different systems. So what do we do? I mean, I'm old enough to remember EAI, remember that Enterprise Application Integration, which was typically message services, right? Like MQ series and things like going back and forth. Think Kafka. So Kafka comes along as a new way of doing things. Well, guess what? A couple years, 3 years in, you've got all these topics flying everywhere, and like, who can understand all that? Well, at a certain point, AI can understand some of that stuff, right? And that's where you want to be able to use the AI as an adjunct, not to replace your deterministic systems, as an adjunct. And this is something that you're enabling by vectorizing the data, by indexing the data. I mean, you're doing what we've always wanted to do, but now we actually can do it. Isn't that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And vectorization, as you said, you have to follow RBAC and ABAC rules. But when you vectorize data, those rules don't tend to follow the vectors of data.
Interesting.
So how do you reintroduce that?
Right.
You reintroduce that because you know what's sensitive and what rules are applied to it.
Right.
And the context behind that. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. The interesting thing is Everpure is taking a holistic approach to it. It's thinking about the AI-ready pipeline as discover it, make sure that it's secure, governed, managed appropriately, then help you vectorize it with our data stream product, and make it available at blazing speeds, at performance levels that are industry leading in a very scalable manner.
Well, sure, and that's, I think, why you made the decision to join with Everpure, because they understand the flash drives, they understand the material science at the root level. And think about how, I was joking yesterday that I was so impressed by Hasso Plattner years ago, who saw this vision. He said, there's going to be this intersection point in the future where solid state memory is as cheap or cheaper than spinning disks. And of course, solid state is what? Anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 times faster, maybe more than spinning disks. So it's like, well, why not go that direction? There were some hiccups along the way. I joked that I don't think Hasso saw Kubernetes coming, and that was a bit of a curveball. But nonetheless, you are really kind of fulfilling his broad vision, which was to centralize the data management itself, not be pulling it in all different directions and like doing data quality initiatives downstream somewhere. The more you can shift upstream, in this case to the data persistence itself, the more value there is that extends through that entire data lifecycle.
You're exactly right. And if you have to put policies, do you put policies in 18 different places or you do it in one place? Because it's going to be applied universally across everyone. Which is why Charlie talked about the universal data intelligence layer, which is heterogeneous in nature. So if any storage, any cloud, any on-premise or mainframe data, is heterogeneous so that you can have this one place that you can go to get the right contextual intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's so funny too, because I also remember years ago thinking to myself, governance or data governance groups, there are security groups, these are different groups. But guys, you're doing the same thing. Really, if you're governing something efficiently, you're also securing it. These are two peas in a pod, and yet we've had all these organizational silos, workflow silos, policy silos, and you're really deconstructing all of that, right?
Well, it used to be tool-driven, right? You had a DLP tool, and it had its
data
own
loss
DNC,
protection,
data loss protection. Then you had compliance tools, and they had a little bit of DNC as well, and they had their own policies. And then you had like data access management tools. They had their own little data discovery and classification. So by bringing it up a level, now we create a Lego plate, right? A Lego plate which has context of all your data, and it's classified appropriately with the best accuracy. On that, you can put the Lego blocks. A Lego block of putting access intelligence with this DNC gives the security person DSPM. With the right compliance laws gives you the compliance capabilities, but AI needs all these Lego blocks working together. So by us giving you that very good Lego plate takes the entire organization, CDO, CIO, CISO up a level, and that's how most of our customers buy. Anyways, we typically have all three of our personas involved because that intelligence applies to each one of their departments.
That's right. It's not fragmented, and I think we all know, and our break's coming up in a second, but fiefdoms cause trouble in large organizations because you get friction, you get people working at cross purposes.
Yeah.
That's not good for the business. That's not good for the people in the business either. And so by dissolving silos, application silos, data silos, functionality silos, workflow silos, you're really facilitating the overall business objectives, getting people working on the same data at the same pace, at the same vision, if you will. That's a big deal. Well, folks, don't touch it. That. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis.